What about how hard it is to find a parking spot in space? Well, you see, in space it's a bit complicated. Everything's always moving in space. Moons around planets, planets around stars. That's Isaac Newton for you, right? But it turns out there are places where you can park things in space. Now let's close in back on our Earth here and talk for just a moment about these special points here. These are called Lagrange points, and don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with the physics lesson. All you need to know is these are kind of like, here it is. Now, on Christmas Day, we finally managed to get this beautiful machine out into space. After 20 years in development, we're very, very excited about it because its mirror here is 3 times wider than the legendary Hubble Space Telescope. It'll be able to look farther back in space than ever before and in much greater detail. It's got to have a sun shield to protect it from the heat of the sun here. The instruments have to be kept very cold in order to work. And if you want to get a sense of scale for things here, well, that's about the size of a standard tennis court. So this is quite a large machine here. Now, just yesterday, in fact, we got our very first images from this machine. Now, I do want to set expectations here. If you've ever been to an eye doctor before for contacts or glasses, well, they pretty much don't really get it right on the very first try. So that's what's going on with this image here. The mirrors are not quite yet fully aligned. What you're seeing here is the same star 18 times, one for each little hexagon of the mirror here. So all this tells us is that the camera is working. We'll get much, much better images once it's fully aligned. We're thinking around summer it'll be ready to go. And of course, in our modern era, you also gotta have a selfie. So we got our very first images, although do keep it not nearly as brilliant or bright as Saturn's, but they're still there nonetheless. And Jupiter's also got a very striking feature on its surface, if you can call this gas a surface. This is the Great Red Spot, a gigantic storm, a hurricane, if you will. It's been raging for hundreds of years now on Jupiter. Because with no solid land to slow this storm down, it can just keep going, going, and going. In fact, Galileo himself in 1610 was able to see this exact same storm. And if you want to get a sense of scale for things here, well, here's how our little blue planet stacks up. You could fit several Earths inside just the Great Red Spot here and still have plenty of room to spare. Jupiter certainly is a titanic planet indeed. And being a big, massive planet, Jupiter has also acquired a very impressive collection of moons. 79 of them orbit around Jupiter here. It's almost like a little mini solar system in and of itself. Now, we could spend all day just exploring the moons of Jupiter here, but we've got to narrow it down to just one. And if I had to pick just one of these moons to get a closer look at, well, it would have to be the icy world of Europa. Now, Europa might not seem very interesting at first glance, but hey, it's what lies beneath that counts, right? And that's the cool part about Europa here. Because far below its icy crust, there is more water here. Liquid water than all of Earth's oceans combined. And we know it's there because we've actually seen it escaping from the surface in the form of geysers, which shoot that water out into space. how is it warm enough to have liquid water all beneath all this ice, you might be wondering? Well, the answer is Jupiter. We mentioned Jupiter is very, very big and massive, therefore it's got a lot of gravity. So Jupiter's gravity is constantly tugging on Europa that way, while Jupiter's other 70-something moons are tugging on Europa that way, and all that tug of war creates friction beneath the surface. If you rub your hands together real fast for a few seconds, you'll start to get warm. And we call that tidal heating, the same effect that causes the tides here on Earth with our moon, except way, way more powerful with Jupiter's awesome gravity. That's how it has liquid water oceans beneath its surface. Now, we would like to send a probe or a robot here to Europa in the next few years called the Clipper. And what the Clipper is going to do is it's going to fly through some of those geysers that shoot that water out into space and take a few samples for us. Because if there is liquid water here, well, there's a chance, a teeny tiny, ever so slight chance, there could be some form of life here as well. Now, I want to be clear, we are not quite expecting little green men or Grogu's or anything along those lines, but perhaps some simple life, bacteria, microbes, maybe even some fish could be swimming around here in Europa's oceans. So, we're really looking forward to getting a closer look at this moon of Jupiter, hopefully sometime soon, out of the solar system and into Orion. And here we go. There goes Sirius and Procyon. There goes the bullseye star, Aldebaran. These stars are pretty bright in our sky because they're actually some of our closest neighbors, relatively speaking. There's Betelgeuse up there, Rigel down there, and coming up in front, we've got the 3 stars of Orion's belt. And now, the beautiful Orion Nebula complex comes into view. First off, this gigantic red ring is called Barnard's Loop. It's absolutely immense, hundreds of light years across. Up in front of us, this orange nebula here is called the Flame Nebula. There are stars that were just born on the inside here, and once they ignited, they began to illuminate the nebula from the inside. And that's what we're seeing here. Now, coming up in just a moment as we pass by the Flame Nebula here, any equestrians in the audience today? Well, this one's for you. Also, one of the most popular things to point a telescope at in our nighttime sky, the Horsehead Nebula. Now, there's star formation going on here as well, but it's not quite as far along as that Flame Nebula here. Give it a few more million years, and this beautiful dark color here will start to be illuminated from the inside from those brand new stars as well. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming up on the shining example of beauty here in this part of our sky. The namesake for the Orion constellation here, the Orion Nebula, a stellar nursery where new stars are being born. And this one is much, much farther along than those other 2 here. Those stars are only a couple million years old. That's nothing on the scale of star lifespans. And after they ignited, they gradually pushed out all this gas, and then they illuminate the inside of the Orion Nebula, giving us this beautiful, beautiful sight here. The Orion Nebula is one of astronomers' favorite targets in our winter sky. So the next time you look in the bubble, it's over 100,000 light years across, and it's a big, big big place, our Milky Way, but leaving it behind now. Now, every point of light you see out here isn't a single star, but rather an entire galaxy, just like our own Milky Way, with millions and billions of stars in each and every one. It's a big, wide universe, folks, and there's certainly no shortage of things to see. We just need to look up and explore. And a state-of-the-art space telescope will certainly help with that. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bring it on home. So let's make our way back to our corner of the universe, in our Milky Way galaxy here. And now plug in the coordinates for home. As we head back inside the Milky Way, back to our spiral arm of it, where once again, these familiar star patterns and constellations, they start coming back into shape as we approach our star, the sun, one among billions, but special to us nonetheless. And coming right up, the third beautiful blue planet out from that star, our home, Earth. We've made it back, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, I'd like to thank y'all for getting around the galaxy with me today. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If y'all would mind using that exit down on the right side of the planetarium, enjoy the rest of your day here and have a fantastic weekend. This has been Will. Space out.
Space out.